I graduated my bachelor's degree in culture and social history in 2021 at University of Greenland, and my studies are very much linked to anthropology, humanities, and history. In my bachelor thesis, I wrote about Indigenous peoples' rights, status, and utilization in Greenland, in the international outlook and in the governmental level. I have written my bachelor thesis in my native language, which is in Greenlandic, Galaslisut. It was mainly to make a statement for my rights and for my language to step up in academia. And I have researched and experienced throughout my education that Indigenous rights are not valued and not known enough in our local communities, in their governmental level, as well as in other institutional authorities. So during my master's education, I kind of followed that path. And my focus was Indigenous related issues in the Arctic, in the circumpolar north. And I have been a graduate student at UET, Arctic University of Norway, studying Indigenous studies for a semester in 2022. So my courses were Introduction to Indigenous Studies, and Indigenous Revitalization, Languages, Literature, and Arts, and History of Indigenous Peoples, Ethnic Minorities, and the Multicultural Society in the North. So it was a multidisciplinary class, which also gave me the opportunity to experience and delve into many different perspectives on how to interpret various topics. For example, I come from a distinct country where not many people knows about, and I may have different outcomes and approach on how I express myself and my opinions, but it gave me the ability to put things into perspective and learn from them, and to be surrounded with open-minded and accepting people from so many different countries and cultures is in itself a very developing gift. So during my master's education, I have attended the courses of an introductory course to anthropology and cultural theories, a course on the history of Greenland, and a postgraduate course on the global history of decolonization after 1945. And currently, I'm working on my master thesis, specializing on the implementation of Indigenous languages in academia, and I'm analyzing the utilization of Greenlandic languages at University of Greenland, as well as Sami languages at Sami Alleskula, Sami University of Applied Sciences, located in Kautokeino, Norway. And the method of my master thesis is a comparison method on how they implement their own native language in their higher education and to what extent. And I did my interviews with professors, students, and principals. And in my analysis, I mainly looked at the language policies, strategies, and institutional goals, as well as the historical development of the institutions, both institutions. So in addition to my personal and professional development during my studies in Norway, I have also had the opportunity to work with the Arctic Council, Indigenous Peoples Secretariat, and was involved in the Indigenous Youth Leadership Workshop with other Indigenous youth from the Arctic countries, which gave me various opportunities as well. It gave me so many opportunities and opened up the doors to so many things that I definitely will have focus on in the future. It's not always easy to work on Arctic matters because there's a lot to take into consideration, but it gave me the strength to work more and for my people as well. And it's of course different from what I'm used to. It is really a meaningful experience with challenges, and I've learned a lot, and I'm still learning. But you don't stop when there are challenges. You build resilience and keep moving forward. And working with Arctic related issues can be a lot and not always easy, but knowing what you are working towards in the bigger picture is an honor to work in an environment that has an influence in the Arctic matters and education. So that have been an experience, definitely. So I'm really grateful that UArctic has given me the opportunity to express my passion in an international level and work on my interests in my everyday life. And I've really learned and evolved personally, and I still learn something new every day. But I know that challenges will only make you grow. Thank you very much for that question. The aim to have ethical protocol is to acknowledge and recognizing indigenous knowledge as its own right. Ethical protocols that ICC has developed has been to co-produce knowledge-based processes on various knowledge systems where science and indigenous knowledge is valued and utilized in policymaking, primarily to strengthen knowledge exchange and communication across the Arctic. And I think indigenous peoples are probably one of the most researched. From my experience, having been studying indigenous studies as an indigenous woman, from my perspective, the word research is very much linked to European colonialism. And I think that's why it's important to take our narrative back, not only in academia, but also in terms of self-determination. And the perspective and importance on having protocols by indigenous peoples to the researchers that comes to the community is important. Having ethical protocols must be useful and prevents harm to the community and the people or the nature that is to be researched. And I think it's important to respect knowledge systems and different ways of knowing. And the protocol will also help us to avoid being taken advantage of. Also, in terms of ethical consideration, as an outsider researcher, is important to have knowledge on the community's values and demands in their own community and show respect when coming to their land. And when a researcher comes to a community, usually the local people does not always know what's behind the research, and they could leave without giving any protocol to the community. And the protocols are the strategies, are the ones that will be a great tool for all of us. And it's how do we engage and how do we engage and who do we want to engage with? It was also pretty much us saying nothing about us without us, and we are very collective as a people. We have collective values and beliefs. It's not common to see one Inuk making all of the decisions, but we listen to ourselves first, and that is what the strategy was. Yeah, it can be difficult for indigenous scholars to study indigenous matters because it's so reflective. But the value is that indigenous scholars allow us to see what is special and needed and to make things visible and to highlight what is meaningful in respect of Indigenous people's own understanding of themselves and the world. But in other cases, lacking respect of the knowledge and the knowledge holders have been experienced in various of perspectives in different communities and groups. It is to respect different ways of knowing, and Indigenous knowledge is science-based as well. And Indigenous languages are foundational to identity, cultural heritage, and for our future as a people. And the project that I'm currently working on is linked to this. I'm working on collecting Indigenous learning resource materials that have been written by Indigenous scholars. It is mainly to promote ethical protocols that different Indigenous groups have been working on, and having access to ethical research protocols to the researchers is crucial, and having this open value is something we are working towards currently. Even though it sometimes can feel lonely in what I do and strive for, in the end, it is all the Indigenous peoples in the world that's keeping my work alive. And they motivate me every day to fight for my own rights. And in my family, I'm surrounded by such strong and vulnerable women that never give up and stays true to themselves. And those women in my life are the reason for what I do. And they are the reason why I never lose sight of where I come from. And you cannot change anything without fighting colonialism within us and within our surroundings. I think the protocols really inspired me, especially being an Indigenous researcher. I also have to think about how to approach my fellow Inuit and how I should approach other Indigenous groups when doing the research. The thing about being an Indigenous scholar is you are being an outsider and an insider researcher at the same time, in a way that you are an insider when doing a research among Inuit as an Inuk, but you are an outsider when doing a research about other groups of Indigenous peoples. I can say that many Indigenous researchers have struggled individually to engage with the disconnections that are apparent between the demands of research on one side and the realities they encounter among their own and other Indigenous communities with whom they share lifelong relationships with on the other side. And there are a number of ethical, cultural, and political and personal issues that can present special difficulties for Indigenous researchers who, in their own communities, were partially as insiders and are often employed for this purpose, and partially as outsiders because of their Western education. With other Indigenous peoples, they really inspire me and they keep my soul alive whenever I encounter an Indigenous person. I really loved being with Sami. They're so strong and they are the ones who inspire me every day. And I got also really inspired by their strength, and they're really particular and have a specific voice of saying their own opinion. And they're really, if they have opinion, they demand more. And I think it's something that we should get inspired by because it just gives power. And I got really inspired as an Inuk to see Sápmi who's expressing their own opinions and their own demands is always empowering. I think we should always empower each other as Indigenous peoples. I think we should empower whenever we get together because we don't always get together with other Indigenous peoples groups. And you have this very similar way of being, and you instantly connect with those people when you meet them. I don't know exactly what it is, but you always can feel it whenever you are with other Indigenous peoples. When I'm with other Indigenous groups from the Arctic, from Inuit Nunat, and from Samiland, I always feel understood, this feeling of belongingness, to belong, to be heard. And we share a lot of similarities in our own ways of being, also throughout our history. And I always feel strong when I am surrounded by other Indigenous groups because we got each other and we celebrate each other. If we win, we all win. And having this sense of collectiveness is a gift in itself, and having this shared spirit and mindset. I feel I can truly be myself without any judgment in any kind, and not being questioned of who I am and not needing to explain myself. And we fight the same issues, and we will keep on supporting each other and showing solidarity for each other. And that's why collaborations are so crucial, because we are stronger when we are together and being ourselves by sharing our different identities. And it's really important not to generalize and not to objectify Indigenous peoples, because we come from very different places and we have our own beauty and knowledge. And there is a lot to fight for, and there will never be enough to fight for. And we will shape our own history and our own perspective. And Indigenous knowledge will always be enough as a scientific knowledge. It is a scientific knowledge, and we always should inspire each other and take those inspirations with us. And it has not always been easy throughout my education, where I have different knowledge and it's not acknowledged as scientific or unquote academic enough. But always remember your identity, where you come from.